Eastern Sicily's 7-day itinerary. The itineraries in Eastern Sicily usually involve the major cities of the late Sicilian Baroque, of which I will indicate the most interesting places to visit. To help you create your travel itinerary, I have included tips on how many days to dedicate to in each place. This is obviously an indication. You can choose to spend more time, and I will mention places that you might want to consider staying longer. Welcome back to part 2 of this 7-day itinerary around Sicily. We resume our itinerary in Sicily, heading towards the southeastern area, and we reach the island of Ortigia, the historic center of ancient Syracuse. Syracuse is magnificent in many ways, but I particularly love it for its superb architecture and because it's all surrounded by sea. The majestic Piazza Minerva with the famous Cathedral of Ortigia, you can arrive in a few minutes at the Passaggio Aretusa, where a source of fresh water flows just a few steps from the sea. Among the unmissable places to see in this pearl of eastern Sicily, there are the long streets along the seafront, dotted with some very small beaches, Baroque churches, Jewish quarter, and the Church of Santa Lucia alla Badia, where an important work by Caravaggio is exhibited. If you are interested in know more about the works of art by Caravaggio, make sure you subscribe now, as I will be releasing some videos about Caravaggio soon. The coaches of the Interbus line, another bus service that connects towns and cities around Sicily, connects Syracuse to Catania. I will leave a link for you in the description below. The coach stops in Corso Umberto, about 20 to 30 minutes on foot from Piazza Minerva. If you are traveling by car, you have to leave the car in one of the car parks near the connecting bridges of the island. This 7-day itinerary allocates 2 days to visit Syracuse and should be enough. If, however, you want to explore the surroundings areas of Syracuse, you should allocate 4 or 5 days to this area. In Ortigia, there are several restaurants where you can eat fresh, but make sure you book in advance, otherwise you won't find room. If you want a dinner with a view, choose one of the many places on the Lungomare Alfeo overlooking the sunset. An experience not to be missed. Noto, Sicilian Baroque masterpiece. When you decide what to see in Eastern Sicily, think about dedicating at least 2 days to Noto, which in my opinion is one of the most beautiful places in the late Sicilian Baroque. The historic center was entirely rebuilt after the earthquake that in 1693 destroyed practically all of southeastern Sicily, and was redesigned at a table around 3 main streets. Corso Vittorio Emanuele is the street on which the main religious buildings stand. It was the street of the clergy, one of the 2 main centers of power in the city. It is no coincidence that the most important convents were also built on the sides of this road, which were largely subsidized by the noble families, who sent their second children to the convent so as not to waste the family patrimony, and donated substantial sums of money to religious orders, thus securing their support. Among the most interesting places to see in Noto, I point out the main churches of Noto, the Cathedral of San Niccolò, the Church of San Carlo, and the Monastery of San Salvatore, just to mention the most important. In front of the Cathedral of Noto there is also the sumptuous Palazzo Ducesio, an imposing seat of the town hall with an extraordinary arcaded loggia. The building can be visited, and you can also go up to the terrace on the 2nd floor, from which there is a beautiful view of the Corso. The other important street in Noto is Via Cavour, which runs parallel to the Corso. It was built as a noble street. In fact, here there are most of the palaces of the noble families. In my opinion, however, the most precious pearl of the city, and perhaps also the best known, is Palazzo Nicolesi, which stands on the street of the same name. The palace is an unmissable thing to see in Eastern Sicily, both because it represents one of the masterpieces of the late Sicilian Baroque, and because it was built by an ambitious family of bourgeois origins who aspired to the noble title. If you want to know more about Noto and Sicilian Baroque, make sure you subscribe, as I have other videos about Sicilian Baroque. If you are going to Noto by bus from Syracuse or Modica, you should stop near the Giardini Pubblici. If you choose to take the train, you will need to catch a bus to get to the historic center, as the train station is quite far from the historic center. So the intercity bus is recommended in this case, as it will stop you right next to the gate of the historical center. In my opinion, it takes at least a day and a half to visit Noto, so if you have 2 days it is better, as it will give you some time to relax and take it easy. You can actually visit Noto in one day, but you will have to rush, and indeed it is a shame not to explore this beautiful Baroque Sicilian town. Most of the itineraries in eastern Sicily inevitably pass through Modica, a magnificent city for its architecture, but perhaps best known for its delicious chocolate. Modica is a surprising city. It has a very rich history, because this city has experienced many transformations over the centuries due to earthquakes, floods, and foreign dominations that have influenced its appearance and also the way of life. Among the things not to be missed in the historic center of Modica, Modica Alta and Bassa, are the two churches of the cathedral, the birthplace of Salvatore Quasimodo, the Belvedere Pizzo, and the small rock church of San Niccolò Inferiore. And then of course a Modica chocolate tasting in one of the many chocolate shops in the city, a walk along Corso Umberto I, which was once a river, walking aimlessly in the streets that climb the hills around the cathedral. Both the train station and the main interurban bus stop are a bit far from the historic center, about 20 to 25 minutes on foot. I find that one day is enough in Modica. As regards accommodation, I would recommend staying in Modica Bassa, as this area is more charming than Modica Alta and has all the historic sites. The last stop on this tour of eastern Sicily is Ragusa Ibla, the historic center of Ragusa. Ragusa Ibla has a very particular charm, simpler and vaguely retro than the other cities of the Val di Noto. Ragusa Ibla is very beautiful to visit on foot. The route ideally starts from Piazza della Repubblica, the junction that divides Ragusa from the old city. Near the square there are many buildings in late Baroque style which are worth visiting. The Church of Santa Maria della Tria, with its famous dome covered with blue majolica, is worth a visit. Then you can also visit the Palazzo dell'Ex Cancelleria and Palazzo Cosendini, two buildings in which to observe the famous Sicilian balconies, richly decorated with figures, animals, and other characters. After passing the square, continue slightly uphill towards the heart of the old city, where you will find the Cathedral of San Giorgio and the spectacular square in front of it. From here on it is a succession of churches, palaces, and intertwined streets down to the Iblio Garden, a large green area overlooking the Erminio Valley. Beyond the architecture, what in my opinion makes Ragusa Ibla one of the most beautiful places in eastern Sicily, however, is the atmosphere of the city, suspended between past and present. Although perhaps less scenic than Noto, it is a fascinating place, where it seems to walk in an old postcard. If you want to know Ragusa more before leaving, check out my other videos about Sicily. Here's a link to the audio play you can just click on to discover more about this fascinating island rich in history, culture, and exquisite food and scenery. To reach the old town Ragusa Ibla, there are shuttle buses which make a loop in the historic center, terminus in Piazza della Repubblica and Piazza Odierna, in front of the Hyblian Garden. If you arrive by car, you can leave it near Piazza della Repubblica, where there is a parking lot. You can visit Ragusa during the day, but it is very nice to stop and sleep in the city and enjoy the evening in the historic center. I advise you to stay at least a day and a half to discover this amazing Sicilian Baroque city. Subscribe to my channel now, as I have several videos about Sicily that will be useful for you to plan your trip. See you in my next video.